Good morning, everyone. Um, I have been in a class called Understanding Trauma, and share everything comes to me. And so I, I was like, yeah, let's do this. Let's get in there. And because I wasn't supposed to take it for a while, and I ended up. Hold on a minute. I'm sorry, something popped on my screen, and I had to fix it. Um, you know, Going home. So I started reading. So we're working on like post-traumatic stress disorder and the differences between adults and children. And I made all these videos, and I'm starting to understand some things. So I talk about codependency kind of sporadically, not like real directly, but I understand now where that comes from. Um, so as a child, you're raised in this chaos. There was alcoholism, and there was abuse. Um, and whenever you're like you're wondering like why these people aren't being held accountable. But when you grow up to be older, you're being held accountable, which is how weird. But you're the crazy one, right? So remember that you're the crazy one. And so throughout the years, so so they talk about flashbacks or recurring nightmares and things like that. But mine weren't in my sleep; they were in my waking life. And so like I'd be just sitting alone in my room, and I would start getting these flashbacks. So, for example, when I had this surgery here for my tongue, I kept seeing my eyes doing this, right? And for years, I was like, what does that mean? What are you trying to tell me? So I would talk to my daughter and other people about the traumatic experience my body was having, and it was showing me the effects. The closer I got to healing my other trauma, it started becoming more clear. I started seeing the doctors. They were leaning over, looking at me. After they got that out, they didn't know how they were going to reconstruct me. She didn't have a plan, like I said. And right before surgery, I saw her with her cape and her hair blowing back. So she was the main doctor in the in the situation, but didn't have a plan. And she didn't consult anyone until that day of that surgery. I was in there a very long time. I shouldn't have been. And I left my family out there wondering if I was alive or not. Very unprofessional. Anyway, I think they learned a lot from my case because I heard from other people right after, that they're going into, they're going to talk to them about the procedure and stuff like that. They didn't do any of that with me. Nothing. But it is a learning hospital, so they must have learned a lot. But I had to suffer the trauma, right? So growing up, it was normal for what I was going through. And so I grew up in my own life thinking that's normal. But since I've been in psychology, I've been learning throughout through my body experiences with other people. Um, trust, trust is big for me. I've always trusted, but I've always been burned, and I'm still overly trusting, right? Because um, I love my, I love my neighbors. I love as I love myself. And Father always taught me to, I'm not the judge. So some would say I'm naive or whatever, but I follow what God tells me. So it has really all has paid off because when I started reading in this last, it's not the last one, but it's, you know, we're getting now. I started seeing patterns for children. Um, so as young as 6, they think of thoughts of suicide. Amongst certain cultures, suicide seems to be the way out. And so I'll give you an example. So my son, when he was young, my stepmother would tell him all the time, remember, remember, grandson, you're not going to smoke cigarettes. And when he turned 16, he was going through a lot. He started smoking cigarettes. I think that constant reminder of not going to do, you're not going to do, you're not going to do, right? When he came to live with me in Canada, my relationship wasn't good with my husband. But I just thought it would get better. And I didn't want to call my dad because he would have told me I told you so. Because my dad always seemed to know things that he shouldn't have known. Like, but abusers know abusers, right? And that's what I'm learning through each class is that abusers know, and they know how to protect themselves, and they know how to keep themselves from getting in trouble, and they label the child instead of themselves. So when I was acting out as a kid, um, she's the crazy one. She's not right-minded, but he never let me spend at people's houses. He was real selective who I hung out with, and my mom kept me isolated. Period. But it was normal. It was a normal, everyday thing, but happening since I was a kid, baby, you know. And then I'm in my adult life, and before my DD died, she said to me, she was telling me things, and I was like, she's like, yeah, I go and I ask where the kids. She was 10 years younger than my mom, and my mom said they're in their room, and there was feces all over the walls, and we were dirty, disgusting. But my mom just put us in there because she wanted to deal with us. And I remember as the years went on, when she would have family members in the house, she would kick us out and we couldn't come back in. But I remember smelling this funky smell. But later, I realized it was marijuana. So, but the family knew that we were in this room. Why didn't anybody do something? It's really hard for me to wrap my mind around all this stuff. It's like I'm cracking up, but I'm not. I'm getting the answers that I need to help others. But I'm helping myself first. I'm literally understanding. So as I'm reading, and then, I'm reading these things out, I am an adult who was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And I'm thinking they're nuts, right? I'm like, how is this possible? But I had paranoia, I had fear, anxiety. I was in and out of the hospital when I first got here the first 3 years. But when I decided to part myself from my dad and his wife, I started getting better. I stuck to my reading of the Bible. I kept giving messages. I kept helping others other than myself, and I was going through this process. I didn't even start school until the epidemic started. And that's when I had just started 2017. And I had to keep taking breaks because all the information I was getting was healing me, but it was overwhelming me as well. And I'm overwhelmed a little bit now too. So the codependency comes in um, through yourself, hanging out with those abusers. And it was really weird too. And I talked about this throughout my videos. Is my stepmom is like, well, she would call me if she didn't hear from me. Hey, you want me to take you to the store? And then, if there's issues and problems and stuff. And I just finally got tired of it. I started paying somebody else to help me out. And I talked about him too. I buy him soda because he wouldn't take money. But sometimes I put money in there for him. And the flashbacks. So my son, he came to live with us in Canada. And we were having problems there. So my ex was from there, but we were having problems. We bought the home from someone that had the whole family was there. They own land on that area, and we found out in the deed before we purchased the house that if the guy sold the house or if he died, there'd be no water for his family, and the people who bought the home wouldn't have water rights. So that was changed. But we started getting tormented by one of its brother's children. He was coming in our house. He was listening shit. He was causing a lot of issues in our home. But I knew someone was in there. So father showed me in the shower today. I put up a camera system. I trained my Great Dane for human trafficking. And if I knew that person was in my house, was in there. But he kept getting away. And I didn't have videos. I had sensors. And so eventually, it was about a year later, my dog nailed him. And I let the Mounties know. And then they took care of it from there. But he was trying to make me look crazy. He was affecting me and my children. And I thought to myself, this is so weird. So then my dad would be telling people or telling my children negative things about me, but my daughter would call him out on it all the time. And so he knew he couldn't convince her. So, yeah, it is what it is. And then the tone, he showed me tone. So when I used to listen to Spanish speakers, I mentioned in my video that when there was drama, I'd stay away from it. So I, Father, all through these videos, I share with you what he's taught me. And I find it fascinating because I was an adult and didn't know. So when you finally wake up, you're like, oh my God, I've been playing this whole entire time. I went through all this for no reason, just because you wanted to be abusive. That's crazy. That's extreme gaslighting. And I've met people like myself in my age group or and a little older who have been heroin addicts, who have been addicted to some form of, you know, if you can't beat them, join them, so they become narcissists. Um, you start to conform to these people, but I didn't. I absolutely refused to be like that. Why would I want to try to harm somebody on purpose? Absolutely not. I'm not doing it. I know what it felt like, and I carried it in my heart. And when I saw it in others, I reached out, and I was a part of their life. It might have only been for a moment, or for a day, or a month, or a year, and then just move on. You know what I mean? Well, you probably will after this. But the thing is that I don't have a lot of support, but I do have support through my class. I have my own support, and then my daughter and my videos are helping. They're helping me piece things together, and these classes are just beyond. And I think that more people who are in psychology should share. I've met people who are going to be a massage therapist or chiropractors who take these classes and are sharing their experiences on TikTok, YouTube. You know, it's it's heartbreaking because I've always tried to be as good all my life. I mean, my dad needed me. I was there for him. Um, it was windy. I mean, I worked at night in nightclubs, so I could have a life outside of construction because it's really hard to date other guys who want to arm wrestle you at a date. That's not a date. God, frustrating. And it's heartbreaking too because I am 58 years old, and where does my life take me now? Oh, life was taken from me. How can you, as parents, you guys live with yourselves knowing you damaged your children because you're damaged, or you want to be abusive, or just want to mess with people's minds? It's crazy. Like, and then waking up realizing, hey, you got post-traumatic stress disorder. I was diagnosed 15 years ago. I really thought they were nuts. Where do you get this stuff from? And it made me mad that they used my childhood for the diagnosis. I'm my own person. I'm not like that. I don't treat people that way. And then to find out through my classes, I have post-traumatic stress disorder. I used to be ashamed of my diagnosis. I used to be ashamed of a few things. I'm not ashamed anymore. I didn't create this for myself. It was given to me. And it's not a birthright. It was given to me by my own parents. I wrote a thing on complex trauma, and my papers, I did it through a paper. And I talked about my parents' own issues, but it was really put out there about my mother. And I was so angry when I did that. But Father wanted me to write it. I guess probably didn't want me to submit it to her, but she gave me an F on it. She can F it all if she wants to. Flying flip. But I went back and resubmitted the correct paper. But with all the stuff that I read, it all came out through through that week. It was my very first week of this class, understanding trauma, and so I have to keep telling myself it's not about me, it's about others. But in reality, it is about me. It's a real mind blower. It really is. I mean, I'm glad that it's healing, and I'm pissed off. Sorry about the cuss word. And every right to be. I don't. I am right to have that feeling. I have the right to feel the hurt too, because, um, but I never, for my children, I always encourage them that never rely on another person, pay your bills, or your life's not going to work out. For the first adult years for me, my parents were bailing me out all the time. Not my mom, my dad. And then when I stopped asking for that, um, I started to grow. I started to, live my life and build. And then my first, well, first, my actual husband on paper. Um, well, no, that was a different one. That's divorce. Um, my second husband on paper. He was an addict, and so I was make sure the bills were paid and stuff like that. But he was the main supporter. But he'd run to a crack house and not pay his rent, so we moved. Um, I mean, to get us into a new place, you wouldn't believe the stories he told. And I felt bad for them. And as soon as things happened, I just moved. Because I didn't want to leave them like that. And then when the state came in and said, hey, you got to leave him, or we're going to take your kids, I chose my kids. They gave me housing, but there's no food stamps in Canada. There's no other resources. You're on your own. So I had my child support, which helped from the United States. Because back then, our money was worth 1.5 times. But we were real limited. I mean, I learned to live to next to nothing. And I learned a lot there. And I learned a lot about myself. And it was really worth it. I used to be for a long time though, like angry, because not not when I was with him, but I mean later. Like he didn't pay his child support and stuff, but he thought I was gonna fail and sink down the ground, be homeless, and my daughter was gonna be a prostitute on the street, because that's what he told her. Just wiggle your butt and you can get anything you want. What a real winner, you know. Sorry, my mouth's salty a little bit. Um, I made it. I made it through, and everyone who dished out their crap made it through that too. And it's a lot. And I'm working on something right now. I have to get it done. And thank God it's only a PowerPoint, but it's overwhelming. It's like when you find out for the first time you don't have any money, but you worked all your life for it. And so, it's just not there. Do you blame, you know, the, out, the outcomes? Why did this happen? So, for a good example, so my daughter don't mind in a 401k, but she's not sure the job is guaranteed, so she wants to open outside of her thing. I'm like, just open a savings and just start stashing money in there, because that is the best way. And it's going to build interest if you find the um, right bank who has good interest, and just do that. It's safer that way. But is it safer? Because look what happened to Russia after they attacked Ukraine. They took away all their money. You know, they put sanctions on Russia. But we have our U.S. president who's doing the same thing to his own people. It makes no sense to me why you would want your economy to be broke. 'Cause I don't get it. But it's like having a family member who doesn't want you to ever have love, who wants you to just be alone all your life. I mean, when Father showed me that time in my room with my mom, he showed me on her day off. She'd wear these pigtails, her little Trans Am car, and she'd put on tight jeans, and she'd be gone all day long. We're already in that room every day for months, for the whole week, and you're off, and I'm screaming at the window, pounding on it. Where are you going? Why are you leaving us here? What up is that? She was fucking messed up to do that to her own children. And I'm cussing here because it's necessary. It's hurtful. And that's probably why I haven't seen her on the other side of the veil, because she's still healing, that still paying for what she did. Maybe it will be that many years that she'll be in that place where she's more to be there, morally to be there. Remember that what you do to others, you will be affected by it. My DD went straight to heaven. 3 days SR. Everybody goes to purgatory. It's law. And I have it written. It's documented. No one is without sin, even myself. I've made my own mistakes. By the way, let me get back to that. Sorry, I forgot about that. Speaking of mistakes. So, when we were in that house in Canada, I was being harassed, right? And so everyone kept thinking it was my husband because he was an addict and he might have owed somebody. And so they were coming up, tapping on the windows at night, coming in and out of the house, um, when we weren't home. They might have done it when we were there. I don't know. There was an experience where somebody had pounded on the wall on the inside of the garage, but there was no wet marks, no shoes. So it was like, why is that happening? I think the spirit in the house was letting me know that there's something going on. We all heard it, me, my son, and my daughter. It was really scary. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm calling the police. They're like, we're not driving out there for a pound in the wall. And there's no wet footprints. And there's no pipes either. So it's really weird. So what happened was, he was in school and it was a weekend. So I had made plans to take me and my kids into the garage and commit suicide through letting the car. And but my kids didn't. I think I was telling them because I wasn't in my right mind, I guess. And so what happened was it was Sunday night, and I put the kids in the car, and we were sitting there. The car's running, and my son starts talking to me. He goes, "Let's do this next weekend." Because I got this big trip coming for school, and I want to do it. And me, I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead." Okay, so we'll wait. So we all get out of the car, and come Monday after he went to school, he told, and thank God he did, because none of us would be here today, and I'd be labeled a murderer. And I got the help that I needed. The town doctor, um, he was aware of my husband's stuff because he knew the family. He knew there was history there. And then CPS came in from Canada, um, town doctor, and the psych doctor, and they got me right into treatment right away. But they didn't take my kids, but they kept an eye on me, and it was really helpful because they put me in therapy. I think that was the real. When I did therapy in my home state, because I was arrested for domestic violence for fighting back, and that's when they just changed the law that both people go. And so, but when I went to Canada, I started working on what was really happening to me. And then in the U.S., they actually diagnosed me when I moved back here 7 years later. Well, it wasn't seven; it was a little longer than that. It was it came back for 7 years, but they diagnosed me within a year. And then I had in therapy, my case manager said that they're not going to help you heal. If you want to be better, you have to heal yourself. So I prayed to God, and He just kept taking me to books, and He walked me through the process. And I share my books. I donate them. I will. I will buy books for people. It's strange too. So when I was in my GED class, through the adult education program, through PIMA, uh, there was a young lady that was there. She had aged out of foster system, and she was coming into a real large amount of money. And she was talking about, I'm like, you really shouldn't tell people things like that because they're going to want to date you for your money. Well, one day she asked me for a ride. I said, okay. And I passed the library, one of them. And I had this strong feeling to go back. And I was like, no, I'll do it later. And I had this pull in my ear. It was so painful. I go, you know what? If you wouldn't mind, we just have to make a stop real quick. And so she comes in with me, and Father takes me right to the aisles, and I pull them out. One was the bully in your relationship. I don't remember what the other one was. And I go, these are for you. And I checked them out in my name. And she went home, started reading them, and she called me. She goes, how'd you know I was having problems with sleeping? I didn't. And she started to explain to me she was in a relationship, and he brought her a car that didn't work. It was basically parking it there. And she offered to fix it. And then he said, I'm going to take it back when you fix it. And but she worked clear across town. She needed the vehicle. So the book, The Bully in Your Relationship, helped her put two to two together that she was being used and that he was married and he was using her all the way around. And she was young. So when she came into her money, who do you think was going to take that money? But not in God's plan. And she dumped him. And she moved to that side of town, and the foster care system helped her. She had a really good job. She got her GED. She accomplished all her goals, and no one took her money. That's why it's real important to pay attention because you can help somebody and not realize you can help them. Sharing your stories, and for me, when I share my stories, I don't make it about me. I share them like, I had this really cool, interesting conversation with someone, and I want to share it with you. I never made it about me because I really didn't think it was about me, but it was. Those experiences I had, all about me, and I'm learning it. It's a lot, and I'm feeling better because Father is we're continually sharing all the different scenarios that can happen. It's amazing that so many things can happen to one person, but it's happened. There's no ifs ands about it. And I used to write about all those situations, and then one day I got mad, and I'm like, "You said you were." I was mad at God because I didn't understand why things weren't moving. It's like the same old, same old. And I think what brought that on was my daughter was dating someone at the time who was new, and he disrespected me out of nowhere. He said, I go, is that your music? I'm in the back of the car with the baby. And he's in the front with her. He goes, yeah. And if you don't like it, it doesn't matter. I'm going to still listen to it. Out of nowhere. And I'm like, you like being with my daughter? He goes, yeah. I go, well, it won't be long. He'll be out the door. And he goes, what? And, just ignored him. And then my daughter did it. She kicked him out. So he's like, don't ever come here again. The guy couldn't even apologize to me. He bought me an air pump, which actually came out handy a little bit later for my car. And she's like, and, and he just could not apologize to me. He couldn't because he thought he was in the right. How can you be in the right when you totally disrespect somebody's mother for no reason? Asking, is that your music? It was kind of weird music, but I didn't say anything. I was quiet. Sometimes if I just say one little thing to somebody, their true colors come out. It's what it is. Crazy. But I'm really thankful that my son saved us that day. And he knew the right things to say. And I think that God is in all of us, and He tells us constantly, but some are listening and some aren't. And I'm really, really thankful that I'm here today sharing these experiences, parts of my life that most people would never share with anyone. One more thing. So I met a woman about 10 years ago. She was older than me, probably 10 years, maybe 15. And she told me the hardest thing she ever had to do was quit smoking cigarettes, that it was easier to quit, I don't remember the name of the drug, heroin, than it was to quit smoking. And I know because I'm going through it right now. I really needed surgery, and I'm struggling because the cigarettes have been my crutch to get through my stress. But it's the worst thing ever for me. And they talk about that smoking is the number one cause mistreatment of a child into adulthood, and they carried it to their adulthood. And they also linked um, many illnesses, health illnesses, to mistreatment in childhood trauma, which makes totally sense. I've had two cancers. It affects two separate cancers. And I always tell my daughter, too, that stress is the number one thing for cancer. And that's why when you get cancer, the first thing you're going to think about is, I'm going to live and watch everything that's happy. Stay away from everything else. And God will block out all that stuff. He also brought me to a Pacific movie. It's about people who get AIDS and their struggles with God, and this guy would climb the ladder and he'd be up there yelling to the people. That was the first time I realized that I had a voice, and that if I disagree with Father, I could. And he taught me that I could. And so there was different situations that I'm not doing that. And he brought me that person. I don't know how many times before I finally said, "Okay, I'll do it your way," and I did. Had the conversation with him, but I was always protected. Remember, you're always protected when you're doing right. I want you guys to always remember He loves us. He sees what's happening to us. That's like He did in the Old Testament. And I'm working on a painting right now that I saw something in it that I didn't even paint yet, but I saw the image, and I'm going to finish it hopefully this week. I had kind of put a stop to painting, um, and really focus on this class, but I need an outlet, so I need to start painting. I need to finish, or just keep painting. I just want to talk about it. I just want everyone to know you're not alone. And we have our own individual stories. They may be similar or not at all. But if you're having images in your mind while you're awake, ask Father for clarification. I never thought about asking, can you explain to me why I'm having these thoughts? Or why I'm seeing these things? I've seen other things too, but I just couldn't put the two together because trauma brain will block out uh, experiences, and I didn't know. Because after this surgery here is when it really started hyping it. But I had distrust. When it came to my daughter, I did, because I know nobody sexually harming her or abusing her in any way. And I was real clear with anyone. I mean, throughout my videos, you've heard some of the things I've done. That's real clear on my end. Absolutely not. I do not want her to feel what I felt. Absolutely not. But I did. I want her life to be successful, and it was, and it is. But she had, her own stuff because she had to find out for herself because that's who she is, an individual person who makes up her own mind, which is hurtful to me sometimes because I know it's coming. She goes, I understand that, but I have to live it in order to live my life. So I like that too. That she puts me in my place too about some things. Now I just, I stay out of everything. It's because it's not my place. She knows. All right. Peace and God bless. You guys take care.